Hello, it's Colette from the Sacred Rose Temple, and I thought I'd do a recording to just discuss the issue that we're currently having in the collective conscious field, and that's the energy of fear. So I don't really want to go into too much detail about what's going on in the world. It's getting so much coverage at the minute that I don't want to be part of that collective energy. But I do want to talk to you about the energy of fear and the collective hold and what we all have in us with regards to fear on a spiritual path and how we deal with it. So the fear that we all carry, and we all carry fear, is a very basic survival instinctual response. And this fear response generally lies energetically in the body, in the base chakra, in the lower part of your body, what we call the Muladhara chakra in Eastern medicine. And this chakra, this energy, and what you're made up of in this base is all connected to your survival, your safety, the foundations in which you came in life, and the structures that your caregivers gave you from you were born till you were about 7 years old is when we start to work with our base structure, with our foundation, with our survival. And fear is a really useful tool to use with people. If you can get someone into fear, the whole body will respond in a way that alerts the system, basic survival, you're under threat. And that makes people behave in all kinds of weird ways, and ways that come from a nervous system response. So, for example, whenever we feel fear, and there may be true fear, say the house sets on fire and your body will respond in fear, and your nervous system will act in a certain way. And there are different types of responses of the automatic nervous system. So the first response would be a fight response. So that might mean that we bring what they called a fire hose or a fire blanket and try to fight the fire. And I hold a strong fight response. There's also a response called freeze, and that would mean that if the house went on fire, then you would be frozen in your steps, that you wouldn't know how to stop the fire or how to act in that moment. And then we've got the flight, which would be a response where you want to run away, you want to hide in a ball, or you might run out of the house. That would be first primordial instinct. And then we've got a later discovered nervous system response, which is called fawn. And fawn is a typically feminine response, and that might be that the fawn response, you gather everyone in the house and you make sure they're all right, and then you get them out. So the fawn is kind of a nurturing, a giving response. So whenever fear is invoked, we step into our nervous system. So with what's going on in the collective at the minute, it is responding and sending out a signal of fear. It wants us to be scared. It wants us to come into a place in the nervous system where we have many kind of woundings and memories of being in these situations, in a fear situation. And they begin to make us act irrationally. When we're in the nervous system, we are in a system that has many stored issues, many stored situations, stories, pain, sores, remembrances. And so if you get activated in your fear, you might find the whole nervous system responds, and it's like every little fear that you've ever had, every little bad thing that's ever happened to you is inflamed and awoken in that moment. And we're not in our rational self. We're not in a sovereign place. We're not in a space that's connected to our soul, or a space that's connected to the rational mind. So this is all happening at the moment, and people are behaving really irrationally from a fear response. We have to, in these kinds of situations, really take a big deep breath and anchor down in our sovereign self. We need to anchor in. So for me this morning, I felt a wave of anxiety over what's happening. I'm due to travel abroad in the next 2 weeks, taking a yoga retreat in Sri Lanka. I've got a group of people who are coming with me. And so, safety is paramount, and making sure that I'm making the right decision. So in my fear response, I could be in my survival mode and saying, I'm going to cancel the space and I'm going to stay at home and I'm going to guard my property and bed down. And in a more rational space, when I took deep breaths and I connected to my higher self and to my centered self, I realized that the fear response was making me panic and worry about an outcome that none of us are sure about. So in that moment, I was able to, from a more sovereign space and a more collected space, make the decision that everything was going to go ahead as normal and that everything would be fine. So I really wanted to share this with you. If you're experiencing deep fear at the moment, what can you do to stabilize yourself? How can you anchor yourself? So I use a meditation technique. I will find a sacred space. I will dim the lights, I will light a candle, and I start to come into just a deeper breath. So a deeper breathing, connecting to the breath coming in and connecting to the breath going out. And what that breathing will do is will automatically begin to slow down your whole body. And it's like a cooling balm for the nervous system. Deep, slow breaths reduces the heart rate and everything begins to settle. So it's really important to use your breath and come to a slower breathing. When we're in anxiety and fear, we have a heightened breath. We breathe from this part of our body. And when we're trying to drop into a more centered place, breathing slowly, the energy drops down. And so I take this meditation, closing my eyes, breathing slowly, breathing deeper, and I can feel somatically through my body the energy moving from here down into here. Now, I don't want to fuel the mind. I don't want my mind taking over with its irrational thoughts and with its worries and with its fears. I want myself to be centered down here. So I accumulate all the energy in the lower part of my body, and I really like to then anchor it into my base chakra. I imagine this red ball of energy or globe or a space in me that's deeply rooted and grounded into the earth. And I breathe there for a while, a few moments, and anchor into the earth. And I do like an earth meditation, feeling myself sit on the soil. I might even go outside and do it in nature. So these are really good pointers if you're feeling a little bit anxious. How can you get out of this that will be telling you all kinds of things, and how can you enter down here into a more soulful, more collected, more intuitive place? And when you're down there, it's better for you to make decisions and start to think of whether you're being irrational or irrational. You will start to settle into a more, like I said, instinctual place. So as this world changes, and I've been writing about this for the last 5 years, at least, this stage of chaos that we're entering into. And this stage of chaos, I call it the Black Mother, the Dark Mother phase, has always been recorded by the ancients. And it's seen as a really important time of rebirth on this planet. We are all experiencing a significant change in the way that our world is being governed and run, and what we've done to the planet and how we've been treating people. And change and chaos is called for. This the way we operate in this world needs to change. We need to start to take a more individual look at ourselves and say, what's going on? Why is this world in the chaos, in the turmoil? Why are people dying? Why are people being treated cruelly? Why are we enslaved? Why don't we have freedom? All this needs to be questioned. And while we're laying dormant and sleepy in our little comfortable worlds, we are not addressing the bigger problems that are out there unless a chaos ensues. So for me, this time is really important. Survival mechanism for me is saying, okay, so say things do go wrong in this world, how can I survive here? How can I go back to basics, go back to a natural, more sustainable way of living? Because really that's what this chaos is calling for us to do. Where are we living beyond what the world can resource us? Where are we living beyond where we can resource ourselves? Many of us are slaves to mortgages or to loans or to systems and reliance on the bigger system. I know for me that was one of my biggest drives in my spiritual journey, was to unhook from the system, unhook from a corporate world, a working world in normal terms, into mortgage and wanting to own a place and not have a mortgage and be able to sustain myself, not use consumerism, being off grid and being able to sustain myself without relying on anybody else. So I really want to get that message across in what is unfolding in our world, and that is, the basic survival is going to be flared up, and that might send you into huge panic mode and deep survival mode that's out of balance, that is completely narcissistic. How do I live and I don't care about anybody else on this planet? I need to survive, so I'm going to store food and I'm going to hide things and I'm just going to take care of myself. And we can all fall into that. Or we can start to begin to think, okay, if this is the way things are going to turn out, how do we survive as a race? How does my community survive? How do I, and how have I become more reliant on the world that is around us? And how can I become more self-sufficient? So this is a quest I've been on over the last 5, 6, 7 years of self-sustainability and self-reliance. And that's what brought me here to France, to own my own property, to purchase the land here and to create a home and an environment that other people can learn from, that is self-sustained and a way of living that doesn't rely on the higher forces that be. And that's what I teach. That's what I teach in my courses, in my work, is how to unhook yourself, how to unlock your potential and your power, and how to heal the wounds that you carry that keep you trapped in such an infrastructure as we have in this world now. There are also parts of us that will be highlighted. I know that there's a part of me that does want to hoard food, and that's definitely connected to my epigenetics and the woundings that I carry from my ancestors. I am of high Irish heritage, and so within my epigenetics is the pain of the potato famine and death through food, not having enough food. I know that there's also a deep connection to the clans of Scotland in my Scottish heritage and the nature of survival there as well. So yeah, our DNA and our epigenetical information will make us respond to this situation in different ways. So it's a real big opportunity to look at your responses. What response are you in? Are you in denial? Are you in complete overreaction? Are you in fight? Are you in flight? Are you in complete fear? What's going on for you, and why is that? What are the underlying reasons for your behaviors and for your actions? And that's what I've been feeling as everything unfolds. I was not as aware of what was going on with the virus that's happening at the moment, because I don't have access to a TV. I don't have any news or newspapers here in rural France. And so when I recently went to the city, we had access to a TV in our hotel room, and that's where I seen like the mad hysteria of it being reported 24 hours a day, and just the energy of the fear installation in people. So yeah, I'm well aware of how the media loves to create fear, loves to create panic, and how fear and panic in people create money too. So there's a lot of money to be made out of this global panic that we're currently in. So I really just wanted to allow you to take back some sovereignty, and for you to take back some of your own sovereign self, and realize what's going on out there from your own deeper intuition. What is this all about? To question it. I don't want to give you an answer, but I would like you to question what's going on. What is the bigger agenda behind it? And what can you see unfolding? Where's the gain to be made from this? And then you can start to open up your own sense of inquiry. You can look at your own self and say, how am I responding to this, and what might need healing here? And then you can begin to use what's going on to actually establish a grounding practice, a practice that allows you to come into a more stable sense of yourself, to be able to make rational, intuitive and more soulful decisions. I think that there's a lot of good things coming out of this, because we're realizing as a society where we have been kind of indoctrinated, and where we are for certain opinions, and how we've become very reliant on the bigger structure. But I think really most importantly, what's coming out of this, and the key thing with anything to do with survival and the base chakra, is our ultimate fear of death. So every survival instinct, every primordial movement to survive is rooted in the fear of us dying. Like, we all have a fear, particularly in the West, of dying and of death. And it's the only thing we can actually be sure of, is that we will at one point die. And so as this crawls in our collective, what do you feel about your own inevitability of dying? How does that scare you? How does that frighten you? What's your attitude to your death? Have you ever gone there? So I've written a meditation on death and approaching death, and it was something I do in one of my courses in my Chakra Evolution Round 2 for people who've done a lot of healing. And it's looking at how we navigate our own death, and what that will bring into us when we start to say and realize and face that we will die. And that opens a lot. And that's ultimately what we're fighting against at the moment with this virus threat, is, this could kill me. That's our biggest fear, that this could kill me. So what does that feel like when that's spoken? Where do you need to go? How can you go to a place? Because, the East, if any of you have been to India or any of the Eastern countries, as I've spent a lot of time there, whenever there's a death, there's a whole different approach to death. It's a celebration. It's the mark of new life. It's the mark of the end of a cycle and the beginning of a new. They don't grasp on to the families that die. They see it as an opportunity to come back in another skin. And we in the West have lost faith or a knowledge of the incarnation cycle, and how every death really does bring a rebirth. And that brings us into full circle to this whole, this whole video that I'm sending out is this is a chaotic time, and it's a time of death. It is a time where we're being taken under, we're descending, and in the descent and in the chaos and in the dark and in the shadow, the only thing to do there is to start to question the self. It's said that when people pass away, when they die, the life flashes before them and they think of the things that they should have done, the things that they could have done that they didn't do. And so that's how I'm seeing this time now. What is it asking for us to gather in ourselves? What are our regrets going to be? What things haven't we seen as important? What things have taken over our lives that we've been deeming as important? You know, some people out there are currently thinking that toilet rolls the most important thing that they need. So what is it in this moment that's so important for you, or what you're hiding from, or what is it your whole body is trying to do in its response to the situation? So I'm going to leave you with these thoughts. I'm going to let those thoughts anchor in. And just remind you before I end this video to find a practice. You know, meditation isn't what everyone believes it to be. It's not a complex thing. Meditation is simply finding some stillness. For me, just to close my eyes for a few minutes and feel the whole of my body and my being and what it's doing. Is it in a reaction to something? Is it denying something? Is it refusing to feel or see? And just taking moments in your day to just connect to the breath. Slow the breath and the heart rate, and to see what that does for you. Where does that take you? Knowing that these rapid, shallow breaths that we take are often leading us all to be in our heads. We're often thinking, overthinking all the time, thought. And the minute that we begin to drop into a more, like deeper, lower breath space, just really allows everything to slow down, the energy to drop, and for us to make more rational, collected, sovereign decisions. So I ask you all to, over the coming time, just to drop in and connect to that sovereign place in the self and see what opens from there. So thank you all for tuning in, and speak to you all soon. Bye for now.